John LaBelle here on the difference between men and women, part 2, because I could not put it into one video feed because YouTube has limitations on how large the video can be. I think it's 10 minutes, and I got more than 10 minutes of discussing this issue. Difference between men and women. Here's the difference. I don't know if you know the psychological reaction, we'll call it. If you hurt a woman's feelings, some of them are what they call cutters. They'll take a razor blade and they'll cut their arms or cut themselves somewhere if they're under emotional stress and they can't deal with it. And this is very common among women, but it's not common. I know women. In fact, I got a sister that does that. And but I don't know. I've never heard of a guy doing it. I'm not saying there isn't a guy out there that does it, but it's not a common thing. That psychological problem apparently is a solution for women, not a solution for guys. If a woman's feelings hurt, she'll take it inside of herself. If a guy's feelings hurt, he's a good chance he can pound the shit out of whoever did it. Anyways, that's the difference there. And if you take anorexia, now this is not completely a woman's issue, but the majority of them is. I can't remember what the stats are. I think it's 15% males, but 85% women are have this problem, and it has to do with they actually don't know what it is. I have my point of view. I think it has something to do with drawing attention that gets out of control. And what I mean by that is once a woman, it's not necessary that she may be seriously concerned about her health, but what happens is after she doesn't take nutrition in for a long time, her electrolytes will become imbalanced, which means her brain will become imbalanced and she will not perceive the world or herself correctly. This is why it's very hard to get them back, because it's the mental state they're in. And besides, her stomach has shrunk so much she can't take much food in anyways, because the stomach shrank because it doesn't require it to be the size it used to be. And it's a very dangerous, but it doesn't start off as a disease. I mean, there's girls that purge right after a meal and stuff. But after a while, you're not getting nutrition. But the number one thing is electrolytes. Electrolytes leave your head in a mess. And like a girl will be like, 80 pounds and just an absolute rack of no muscle, no just skin on framework, and still perceive herself as fat. That's because her brain's not working properly. She's not taking any nutrition, and the brain is really in bad shape. And I feel sorry for the girls that die, poor parents or whomever. They're trying to get this girl back. It's a dangerous thing, but it's more commonly in females than it is males. And I think, as I said, 15% I think is males. But that's a new phenomenon. It never used to be. It was like 100% females and like no percent males. But apparently, maybe they're concerned about their weight now too. I don't know. But my theory is that it's the electrolytes that causes the problem. Past that point, I don't think originally when they started doing this thing did they have mental problems. They were going in a direction for a purpose of either being overweight or trying to get somebody's attention. There are probably women that just want to join the anorexic club. I mean, I know so many people that want to be ill just so they got something to talk about and be unique. And I'm thinking, what are you, crazy? Life sucks as it is without taking on illness too. But that's another thing. And well, there were women who got pregnant for the reason of they were more the old-fashioned type girls, with the husband would take care of the woman, and that isn't anymore. There's pressure on them to work now, and a lot of women don't want to. Some do, but a lot of them don't. They have that maternal instinct of taking care of children in their environment, homes. You know what I mean? Nothing wrong with that. I never felt there was. You work or don't work, it's your business. But they'll actually get pregnant, so that responsibility disappears. Some of them make their lives harder by doing that. I mean, but a lot of women will do that. And also do it to trap a guy sometimes. And sometimes a guy will, to get her, he'll try to like work like a beaver to get her pregnant. I mean, it's not like she's just the only person doing this. It can be guys too that do this. And another thing about identity, there was a test done. They took a male child and okay, I don't know how old the child was. It's about it's at a point where he does know that he's male. We're looking at, say, a 1.5-year-old or something. And what they did is the woman dressed him up as a female, a little pink dress and little pink pants and stuff like that, and little pink booties and I guess something for his hair, I guess. And he was in shock. Like they repeated this thing, and you could see that on his face. He was so and the woman would talk to him as though he were female, you know, real gentle, and you know how pretty you are and all that stuff. That anyways, he was very, very confused. He looked at her, and you could see it in his eyes. He didn't know where he was. He got thrown off center here. It didn't make any sense to him because he didn't feel the part, and he is the part, but he doesn't feel the part. And this was done over and over again, and it showed that there was a strong genetic. His brain was set up genetically already as a male, even though he wasn't old enough to really, take a male part. Little children don't take part in much. A little boy will play with girls' toys, and a girl will play with boys' toys, because they're more than an exploration point of life, as opposed to saying, as opposed to having a true interest in being a male or being a female. You have your transgenders. That's a totally different deal right there, and gay people, it's the same thing. It's a totally different deal. I'm just talking about the mainstream, what we call common, which holds about 85 to 90% of people. And so yeah, that's there's a difference. He was very confused. And I was reading some cases in Australia, and it had to do with castration by accident. It could be machinery or car accident or anything. It dealt with the males, and they studied the effects of it, and the suicide rate after that happened to a guy was really, really high. It was like 85%, 80% of the guys killed themselves within 2 years. They just couldn't cope with it anymore. They couldn't cope with the fact that they had lost their identity. It wasn't so much they weren't with a woman, they just lost themselves. They weren't anything. They're not a woman, they're not a man, they're not anything. They're what they used to call a eunuch. And very devastating on the male. And there was a fella, he was a doctor. Okay, not, maybe it happens now, I don't know, but when a male has circumcision, doctors are no good at anything anyways, but they can be botched up. Their surgeons have botched that operation up, and it's a really simple one. All you do is cut the skin and they cut it around and the job's done. But somehow they mutilated this child, and the traditional thing was back in the 50s, they would just remove everything, and you could raise him as a female because he doesn't know what he is anyways. He's only like, a month old or whatever time you took him in there. But this guy, he was a doctor who was studying about 400 cases of this, and he did this over like 20 years or something, and he found it's not true. These children already did know what they were. This is where they discovered that half the psyche is already determined before you're born. I was born male, like my brain is a male brain right at birth. And I actually recognize it more in the unconscious as opposed to conscious. Conscious is, I'm trying to cope with the world, but unconsciously I've already identified myself. So they found that the 400 cases that this guy studied, that the boys were really uncomfortable wearing a dress. They didn't know what to do with themselves. They didn't want to go to school like this. They felt embarrassed. They really had a hard time hanging out with girls because they didn't feel it fit. They felt they were better off being with guys. Their interests were more male. They weren't interested in dolls, although they get dolls for Christmas and their birthday, and they got all the dish sets and everything that females get. They got it, and they took no interest in it, and many of them eventually challenged the thing and said, there's something wrong with me. They talked to their parents or whatever and said, I just don't feel the part. This is what happens probably around puberty. And the parents would, most of them would eventually come across with the truth and tell them, which was a great relief for them because they didn't know what was wrong with them. But it's not a great relief in the fact that where's my junk? I would think that would still be hard because you still got to play this part for the rest of your life, unless you can go to like a junk factory and get some new parts. But back then it wasn't offered. If you circumcision didn't go right and they remove your parts, that was it for life. Today they're doing operations, but back then, I mean, this went on in the 40s and the 30s and stuff, the 20s, and it wasn't every operation, but the odd one that didn't work out for the guy, and but in every single case, they knew something was wrong with them. Even though they were so young, there was no possible way would they have known their identity, but they do know their identity because it's in the brain. It's part of the makeup of gestation when the fetus is, the evolution of the fetus is, that's part of it. And so you have another case where I knew of a boy who I was concerned about. Apparently when he was born female. He had male parts, but they were up inside of him. And I was concerned that they get this thing fixed quickly before it messes him up. But in many cases, his stuff will fall down. In his case, it did. It took weeks, but it came down, which was great because he never did suffer any problems from it. He's just as much a guy as any other guy. And but at the time, it was a real concern because they named him. I forget what the hell his name was, and apparently it was a name they could change by changing one letter and become a female name. And I don't know how his sisters knew because they were like already alive. And I thought, God, they could torture this poor bugger to death too. I mean, he's not going to be able to live with himself. And if they add anything to the pot, it could really mess this kid up. But anyways, good fortune that it dropped down. He was okay. So anyways, that's what I want to tell you. I might run a third video, and if you're interested, I'll post them as video 1, video 2, video 3. See ya.